Let's cut to the chase. What are you trying to accomplish in 20 or 40 or 60 PowerPoint pages?
Tom, the big story is there's a level of fears, and it all has to do with I might lose my job to automation or gig economy, and it's causing people to be concerned about downward social mobility and also downward economic mobility. Business has to step into the void left by government.
Right.
And when business does this effectively, they're going to do retraining and they're going to do wages.
What is so important about this, folks, is the dynamics year to year of the Edelman Trust Barometer, where in 2008, business was on the bottom, weren't they?
Yeah, government was much more trusted than business. And what's happened is now on competence, business is 50 points higher than government. However, business has a problem of ethical behavior. People wonder whether or not business actually is going to do what it thinks and says it's going to do. And so don't talk.
Okay, so this goes back to your reputation management. What advice do you give to a chief executive who's been embroiled in sexual harassment scandal for Me Too or sustainability?
You actually have to make sure that your workers get retrained, that in fact they have the skills necessary for the 21st century. You have to do sustainability. You have to talk about LGBT. You have to make sure it's a diverse and welcoming workplace. There can be zero tolerance for this Me Too stuff. And it's vital that women are the other half of the world. And in fact, you should do this because you want the best employees. 3/4 of employees say, I want to be part of a company that does value and values. And consumers, 2/3 of them say, I'm a belief-driven buyer. If you stand with me, I'll buy your brand.
Okay. Are companies still bad at dealing with crises? Do they do the wrong thing because they don't talk enough to the consumer? I mean, we're talking yesterday with Boeing, with the U.S. Transport Secretary. You know, how do you deal with these, companies that are almost out of touch with what the common person is fearing?
Look, for Boeing or any other company that's in this crisis, you have to make sure that your first audience is your customer. It's not Wall Street. If you do well by your customer, if you make sure that the planes are safe, and Dave Calhoun's a good man, and he will do that, it has to be that passenger safety is the first job, and also that your employees are the partners. Talk to them, make sure that they understand that they're in this together. It's not a Wall Street deal.
You're too modest, Richard. Richard's job is to go in and do triage. Let me cut to the chase. Are you representing Boeing in these challenging times?
We're working with Boeing. We have a lot of confidence in Dave Calhoun and his management team.
What is the Edelman best practice as you work with Boeing right now? The Secretary of Transportation was on fire yesterday over how people pre-Edelman screwed it up at Boeing. What is the Richard Edelman chemistry to get this American iconic company back on track?
It's a great company. It has superb values of engineering, decency, etc. It has to be safety first, and making sure that pilots are trained, making sure that the planes are flown multiple times before they're put back into service over the summer. But this company will deliver a safe 737 MAX.
You've dropped accounts, right? You've dropped an account, for example, the private prisons company that was linked to, that was running immigrant detention centers.
Correct.
What clients will you not take on?
We won't take on tobacco, we won't take on guns, we won't take on coal, and we won't take on questionable governments. And you know, for me, we want to work for companies that are improving society.
Richard Edelman, 15 years ago, whatever it was, I stood on the promenade here and looked over at the immediate zeitgeist at the time, which was the CEOs have to be more visible. They have to be more verbal in their messaging. That's buried in your report this year, but there it is, front and center. CEOs stand up and start talking. How do CEOs talk to that America that mistrusts them?
Tom, 90% of our survey respondents who work for companies say, I want my CEO to stand up on diversity, on sustainability, on immigration. This is a new thing for CEOs. They're
totally agree.
They're not necessarily used to this.
How do you train them?
Why does this matter? It's because the most trusted institution is my employer. 20 points higher than business. Trust is local.
Okay, but
and so how do you get a CEO to do this?
Okay.
You say, look, your employees need you to do this. You want the best and brightest? You have to go out.
Richard Edelman, you and I are going to be in the piano bar tonight at some ungodly hour, and we're going to be there with a CEO who needs your help. How do they speak not to their employees, but how do CEOs speak to an America that does not trust Wall Street or fancy guys in suits and ties?
Talk about your business. Talk about its purpose in society, and be a real person. Tell stories. Say where you came from. Say that, you know, in fact, you had moments of doubt. Be a human being. Don't be some kind of...
But Richard, if your advice is to be a human being, should we just not look for a new chief executive?
I actually think a lot of these CEOs are pretty good. You know, Kevin Johnson of Starbucks is a good guy, and he comes across and says, you know, I want to take straws out of the coffee cups because actually I believe that there's better we can do.
And Francine, David Gabney of UPS with us the other day started out driving a brown truck in America. Those are the stories you can tell.
Yeah, look, one final question, because I know we're running out of time. You have to leave. We have other people coming on. But what is your number one piece of advice for politicians? Is it the same
Good question.
as chief executives, or is it actually different? Because they need to change. They have the power to change regulators.
Look, government actually has a huge trust advantage over business on income inequality, on sustainability, and also on gig economy. But work with business. Don't try to overregulate by yourself. You know, this has to be like a seesaw in the playground. You need two kids of equal weight to have fun in the playground.